Namanda, 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 Namanda.
We respectfully call upon Tathagata Amida to enter this dojo as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. We respectfully call upon Tathagata Shakyamuni to enter this dojo as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. We respectfully call upon the Tathagatas of the 10 direction to enter this dojo as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. Namaminams, namandas, namandas, namandas. Gagon shousegan ishimujodo.
So if you'd like to come forward to offer incense, if you will please remain seating until Ken motions your row forward. Thank you.
Seibujo shoga gao muryoko uidai seishu fusai shobingu Seibujo shoga
Next, we'll have a Dharma message from Roland Sensei. And he was, oh, no, we are not. So Roland Sensei earlier today was saying that he was hoping kids would come because he's downloaded a whole bunch of photos. And I want to see the photos, so I'm just excited about seeing the photos. But we actually have another thing before the Dharma message. Sorry about that. So if I can ask everybody to please rise for our recitations this morning, which will be the Golden Chain and 6 Paramita. And then when everybody is still standing, we'll be singing the Gatha, I Know We Can Be. So, Golden Chain. I'm a link in Amida Buddha's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. In gratitude, may I keep my link bright and strong. I will try to be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will try to think pure and beautiful thoughts, to say pure and beautiful words, and to do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amida Buddha's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. The 6 Paramita, giving, I shall be kind and helpful to others. Discipline, I shall follow the precepts of the Buddha. Patience, I shall be patient and understanding. Endeavor, I shall do my best in all things. Meditation, I shall reflect on the teachings of the Buddha. Wisdom, I shall seek the light of wisdom. And if you will all remain standing for our next Gatha, I Know We Can Be.
I know we can be close together, close, close together, close. The walk up ahead is shorter than most. Come live the Dharma. Come live the Dharma. Be in the light. Be in the light. Wisdom and compassion. Wisdom and compassion will make all things right. Will make all things right.
I know we can be.
I know we can be
More gentle and kind.
more gentle and kind.
The strings of attachment.
The strings of attachment,
Your heart they will blind.
your heart they will bind.
Embrace the Sangha.
Embrace the Sangha.
Push your burdens aside.
Push your burdens aside.
Wisdom and compassion.
Wisdom and compassion.
Take a plunge, oh what a ride.
Take a plunge, oh what a ride.
I know we can be
I know we can be
close together, close.
close together, close.
The walk up ahead
The walk up ahead
is shorter than most.
is shorter than most.
Come live the Dharma.
Come live the Dharma.
Be in the light.
Be in the light.
Wisdom and compassion
Wisdom and compassion
will make all things right.
will make all things right.
Thank you, everyone. You may be seated. So before I call upon Roland Sensei for either his kids' Dharma message, which I want to listen to, or the adult Dharma message, which I'm sure is just as interesting but with no pictures, I'd like to read a short passage. How to listen to a Dharma message. Listen as if I am listening for the first time. Listen as if the message is for myself alone. Listen as if this is the last chance to listen to the Dharma. Thank you, Sensei.
Thanks, Sheila. I'm going to cross you up because I'm going to show pictures in my adult Dharma talk too. I thought I would show the pictures for my children's Dharma talk because I think it'll actually interest people. I know Uncle Tak would have loved to have seen these pictures. In fact, he would have been all over it. So how many people noticed it was a little cold in the Hondo today when you came in? Some people are still wearing their jackets. Hopefully the temperature's starting to come up. And thanks to David for bringing in the heaters and starting the heaters at before 9 o'clock. I think it was 8:30 that you started them. And you can imagine. No? Well, 9, because I was here at 9 and they were already going. And it just reflects to me, so I don't know how many people know, but our heating system is down. We're replacing our HVAC and our heating units, and they're outside. So I'm going to show you some pictures of that. But it makes you realize how long it actually takes with 3 little space heaters to heat up a space this big. And when you go into the multi-purpose room, it's probably going to be a little bit cold as well because we don't have any central heat. Makes you realize how important or how we take for granted, you know, the heating system that we have. It just automatically comes on, or actually in this case, right now we still have to turn it on. But we get heat pretty quickly. And yet, without it, when we walked into this room, like when David and I came in, it was 16 degrees inside of this room, and maybe 16 or 17 degrees in the rest of the temple. So it was pretty cold. So let me just show you some cool pictures. This is thanks to KB. So that's our new HVAC system rolling in on a semi-trailer, coming all the way from Calgary, though I think it originally came from the States where they manufactured it. They were supposed to have replaced it in August, but it's, you know, typical of renovations. We're 3 months late, but that's okay. And they had to take apart the fence that contains the HVAC and heating units, condensers. And you can see they actually had to use a crane. So they had the crane operator come, he had to measure things out, and he had to figure out how he was going to swing that into place. They took the fence out. They had the big crane out here. I wish I would have been here. I was in Edmonton at the time, but thanks to KB and Alan, you took some pictures as well, right? Yeah. So next slide. So that's where it was installed, and you can imagine running a crane with this, I don't know how many ton unit, sitting at the bottom of your crane, and you have to swing it into place, into that little tight spot. I can't imagine how he did it, but it must have been really cool to see. And you can see how we have a fence there to protect it. They had to take that fence completely out. And then the next slide, David. And that's a guy finally installing or starting to install the unit. I think that's pretty amazing. Those units are outside. Which direction? This direction, right, David? And but without those units, this temple, especially the Hondo and the multi-purpose room, would have no heat in the summer and no air conditioning in the winter. So we would be like, summer, the other way around. Air conditioning in the summer and heat in the winter. Yeah. So I thought I'd show that to the kids because I thought, wow, you know, we really need to appreciate, I mean, we take for granted this temple and the fact that it has nice heat when we come in, or it's cool in the summer. And yet if it wasn't for those units, we wouldn't feel that, we wouldn't have that. And it's thanks to Alan, who actually arranged for us to get a JCL grant to be able to replace that equipment. But Wayne and David, who are on the maintenance or building maintenance committee, they've done a ton of work to try and ensure that this happens fairly smoothly. So I wanted to thank David for coming in and getting the space heaters going and trying to get as warm as possible in here. I think it's probably about 18 degrees now in here, but without those space heaters, it would be like significantly colder. So I thought I would show that to the kids. But on to my adults Dharma talk. I'm going to get everybody to please join me in Gasho. Put your hands together. We gather in the temple of the Buddha and raise our voice in gratitude for his wisdom and compassion. May we all, in thanksgiving, dedicate ourselves to the ideal as laid down by our teachers and ancestors. Namo Amidabutsu. Namo Amidabutsu. Namo Amidabutsu. Namanda. So today's Dharma talk, I wanted to actually focus on so this month of November, we're looking after or taking on the subject of maintaining our temple, keeping it clean, because we got a temple cleanup next weekend, next Sunday. But I wanted to talk about what this temple means and how this temple sort of came about. Most of the people in this room know, but I thought it was worthwhile sort of going over some pictures and talking about how this temple got started. So we're gathered in the temple. This is a place of refuge, a place of peace, and I wanted to reflect on those who came before us and the legacy they left us, which is really this temple. And this temple didn't appear from nowhere. It wasn't built by chance. It was born from the aspirations, the sweat, and the faith of all of the people that we call our ancestors, our pioneers, our family, and our friends. Right? They helped to build the original 7 temples that gave rise to this BTSA. So most people in the room know that this temple came about because of the amalgamation of 7 founding temples that existed in southern Alberta, and I'm going to go through those. Of all of those temples, Raymond was the first, right? And there's some members, original members from the Raymond Temple here. And the Raymond Temple was built back in, or purchased in 1929. So the Raymond Temple was a building that belonged to the LDS Church, the LDS Temple. It was a school, it was a meeting place, a meeting building for the LDS, the Mormons. And in 1929, the Buddhists in Raymond purchased that building from them. And that was within 20 years of a bunch of pioneers coming from Japan to move to southern Alberta to become farmers, right? So the first recorded person in southern Alberta came in about 1905, 1906, we think, at least to the Raymond area, who was a farmer. And in 1908, there was actually 72 men who rode a train from Vancouver. They were specifically recruited to work the sugar beet farms, right? So there were 72 of them that came to Raymond. And then in 1908, a year later, 1909, there was another 105 men who came to southern Alberta. And they all were recruited to work in the sugar beet farms because there was a new sugar beet factory, a sugar factory called the Knight Sugar Beet Factory that was opened just outside of Raymond. And some of the pioneers that actually came in 1908 were Kojun Iwasa and Takeshi Karaki. So I just wanted to mention those names because those were quite prominent people who came. In fact, Mr. Iwasa, his family still lives here in Lethbridge. He actually came to North America in 1898, and he was 16-year-old when he came from Japan over to actually the US. So he landed in San Francisco, and he worked in places like Vancouver, some of the sawmills in BC. He worked in California. He also went to Colorado, and then he went to Utah. And when he was in Utah, he found out that, in fact, the LDS members were looking for people to work on the sugar beet farms. And so that's how he actually came to southern Alberta, to Raymond. Prior to him coming, there was actually a group of workers who came from Okinawa in Japan who came to Colehurst and Hardyville, right? And so Colehurst and Hardyville had mines, coal mines. And so they were both railway workers and coal miners who actually came from Japan to work in those areas. And the first of those people, he came in 1900. His name was Ano Makishi. Ano Makishi. And Mr. Makishi actually worked on the railways that came into Lethbridge, and he worked on the high-level bridge that we have. So he was actually one of the people that signed a plaque signifying that he worked on the high-level bridge here and helped open the high-level bridge back in 1901. Other families who were original pioneers in Hardyville were people like the Higa family, the Kanashiro family, the Okutake family, the Tanaka family. Some of the Tanaka family are here. Fujita family, Sawada family, and Nishimura family. So in 1914, the Knight sugar beet factory actually closed down, right? So it actually only closed for a period of 11 years, but it stopped producing sugar because the cost of sugar came down significantly. So at that time, there was 250 Japanese people who were in the Raymond area, and they had to decide, are they going to go back to Japan, or are they going to stay here in Canada? And about half actually went back to Japan at that time, and half decided to stay and decided to farm, and they mostly did grain farming. So the Iwasa family, the Kosaka family, the Sugimoto family, Hatanaka, Takeda, Tobo, Matsuno family, and Koyada family. They were all people who decided to stay in southern Alberta. And it was actually written that in 1915, 1916, and 1970, many of them wrote to Japan to ask for picture brides. So I'm going to ask the people in the audience, how many of your, I would guess now it's your great-grandparents, great-grandmothers, is that right, Betty? It would have been your great-grandmother? Or your grandmother? Grandmother. Okay. How many of them were picture brides? So if you had a grandmother that was here, yeah. So it's amazing to me that there's a whole group of men, they'd come to work on the sugar beet farms and the mines, and they actually send letters to Japan saying, I need a wife, please send me some pictures, right? So it's pretty cool how it worked out. So I wanted to go through some slides just to show you some pictures. So you can go to the next slide, David. Thanks. So these are actually some of the temples that existed prior to World War II. So Vancouver was the first Buddhist temple in Canada of Jodo Shinshu background. Well, it was the first Buddhist temple in Canada, and it opened in 1906. And there's been subsequently 5 iterations of the Vancouver Buddhist temple. They moved from place to place, building to building. Marpole was in 1928, and Steveston was in 1928 as well. Royston, which is in Vancouver Island, was in 1930. Raymond was the first temple east of the Rockies, and that opened in 1929. New Westminster opened in 1932, and that's where my grandfather came, actually. So my grandfather came to New Westminster. Maple Ridge, 1933. Kelowna, 1933. Cheminas, which is on the island, 1933. It was a pulp mill factory then. Fairview in 1934, and Skeena, which is in Prince Rupert, 1935. So all of these temples existed prior to the war, and all of them, except for Raymond, shut down because of the Second World War. So all of these temples existed, and all of them ended up being shut because the Japanese Canadians who were on the West Coast had to be interned into internment camps, or were told that they had to come east of the Rockies. Okay, next slide, David. Thanks. So the first minister in Raymond was Shinjo Nagatomi, and I'll show you a picture of him. And then the second minister, most people in this room would hopefully remember him, was Reverend Kawamura. So Reverend Kawamura first came to Raymond in 1934 to 1940, and then he planned to go back to Japan. Most of the ministers actually who first came to Canada worked in Canada for 4, maybe 6 years, and they went back to Japan. So it was kind of like the missionary work. They would come here, they would work, and then they would go back to their mother temples, right? So Karamura Sensei was going to go back to Japan, but he got intercepted in Vancouver, and he was told that Reverend Abe, who was in Maple Ridge, passed away. And so they asked him if he would stay in Maple Ridge. So he stayed there from 1940 to 1942, and then got interned into, or had to move east to Raymond. But Kawamura Sensei started things like the Japanese Language School, the Young Women's Buddhist Association, and the Fujinkai in Raymond, right? And some of the people in this room, their mothers were part of that Fujinkai. So this is Nagatomi Sensei. He was the first minister in Alberta. Next slide. And that's Kawamura Sensei with his wife and his children. And I believe, Judy, if I'm not correct, that the baby is Leslie. Is that right? Robert? Was he the youngest of the kids? Number two? So he would have probably been the little boy in front then. Yeah, okay. So that's Reverend Kawamura, who was here from 1934 to 1940, and then he came back during the war. Next slide, David. So there was around 600 Japanese Canadians in southern Alberta, and then with the war, another 2,500 moved to places like Raymond, Colehurst, Coaldale, Tabor, and Rosemary. So the population of Japanese Canadians in this part of Alberta increased by fivefold, okay, overnight, like literally overnight. Next slide, David. So because of all of these Japanese Canadians moving here, right, that's what gave rise to the 7 founding temples that we talk about today, that gave rise to the BTSA. So Raymond, of course, existed prior to the war, but in 1943, Picture Butte opened, and they had 189 members, so the same number of members as our temple currently has. Lethbridge Buddhist Church opened in 1955, and that's because Japanese Canadians weren't allowed to live in Lethbridge until 1949, 1950. Right? Coaldale Buddhist Church opened in 43, Tabor in 47. They had 90 families. Rosemary in 1958, and then the last to open was the Lethbridge Homeput Church, which is on the south side, which is a Montessori school now, opened in 71. Next slide, David, thanks. So that's a picture. I think most people know Raymond Buddhist Temple. It was a hemp factory after it was a Buddhist temple. It was designated as a provincial historic site in 1984. Unfortunately, that sign is now gone, and the hemp factory is for sale, right, Judy? I think. Anyways, next slide. So these were some of the pioneers who actually purchased the Raymond Temple in 1929, which is kind of cool to see that picture. So half of the people are from the Mormon elders, and half are the Japanese Canadians who purchased the temple. Next slide, David. So that's Picture Butte, and that's Coaldale Temple. Coaldale Temple, how many people actually went to the Coaldale Temple at one point? I know Alan did, and Wayne. So it was a movie theater at one point. Was it a bowling alley at one point? No, not. Anyways, and it was obviously a Quonset before that, right? That was the second church, yeah, the most recent one. Next slide, David. And that is, Tabor, yeah. So Tabor, that building still exists, and it was a flag and sign. If you can go backwards. Yeah, so that's the Tabor Church, and it's on for sale right now too. Next slide. And that's the Rosemary Temple. I remember going there as a kid. My father would attend twice a week at the Rosemary Temple, and we would have services there. Next slide. That's a picture of my grandpa. So my grandpa came to from Japan to Canada as a minister in 1932. He was first in New Westminster, and then during the war, he actually came to Raymond in 1942. Next slide. So both my grandfather and Kawamura Sensei returned to Raymond. Kawamura Sensei then moved to Picture Butte because they opened a temple there. My grandfather started the Kendo Club and the Judo Club with Akune Sensei and Katsuta Sensei as instructors. The other thing that he did was he arranged for 200 urns to come from New Westminster, because they had it in a columbarium in the temple in New Westminster, and he thought it would get destroyed. So he actually had them shipped by a truck, and they went to the Raymond Temple. So there was a columbarium that was built in Temple Hill, and unfortunately there was some damage. So the people in Raymond decided they were going to build a monument and bury the ashes underground. So both my grandfather's family and Kamurasense's family had to work in the sugar beets initially, sugar beet fields, but after about 6 months they were able to function as ministers again. Next slide, David. So that's the monument that's at Temple Hill. And I always wondered, you know, it took me a few years to figure out, when we were going to Temple Hill, there's this nice monument. I was thinking, well, why does this exist? And it took me going back in that history to figure it out. Next slide. And these are the names of the peoples whose ashes were buried there. Next slide. And so one of the things that I'm reminded of every time I get in front of this Naijin is that the Amida statue, the altar, the Buddha statue in the Dharma classroom, the Kancho bell, all of the things that are part of this temple come from one of those 7 original temples, which is kind of cool. So in 1946, Katatsu Sensei brought the statue from Steveston to Raymond, and the altar from Royston Buddhist Temple also came to Raymond. So we actually have a mixture of different components of the different temples from the original 7 temples. Next slide, David, I think. One other piece of history that I found really interesting is that all of the ministers were given papers to go back to Japan. They were being deported back to Japan. So in 1946, my grandfather, Kamura Sensei, and the 7 other existing ministers were all told that they had to go back to Japan. And 5 of them did go back to Japan. My grandfather and Kamura Sensei were the only 2 that remained in Canada. And they remained in Canada because people in Raymond actually spoke up for them. They actually wrote Parliament, and they said, we really need these ministers here. If we don't have them here, we're probably going to have a strike of the sugar beet workers, and our industry is going to collapse. And so they were able to stay. I found this interesting, though, that there was this comment in the Lethbridge Herald. I and others are pleased to hear that it's planned to send one and hopefully the rest of the Buddhist priests back to Japan. The sooner they do, it will be better for all Japanese. As the spiritual leaders of the Buddhists, they hold the Japanese to the Japanese modes of ways of living. In their service, they speak of the soul and spirit of Japan. We promote the continued use, and they promote the continued use of the Japanese language. They promote Japanese culture in every opportunity, form groups and clubs and societies to keep the Japanese together, which is true. By doing so, they build up small Tokyos, which only brings the displeasure of the white residents upon us as a whole. When they go and the Japanese accept Christianity, as a lot of us have done, we will be able to live almost normal grounds with the Canadians. So I found that that was an interesting editorial in the Lethbridge Herald. Next slide, David. So then in 2006, we began talks about amalgamating the temples, of course, and those 7 temples. Picture Butte had already closed, but the 6 remaining temples formed a committee to form the BTSA. And this building was opened in 2009. And it's amazing, so 2009, spring forward 16 years, and we're already having to do things like replace the HVAC system. But it does remind me that, you know, we owe those pioneers, those people who came from Japan back in 2008, 2009, they were the ones who actually built all of these temples and all of the congregations that exist today in southern Alberta. So when the pioneers arrived, they didn't find what we have today. They didn't have a nice altar like this. They didn't have nice floors. They didn't have heating systems at all. And yet, what they saw was the potential to build congregations in places where people could gather, where they could hear the Dharma, where kids could sit together, where people could sit in silent contemplation and learn about compassion and get gratitude. So these pioneers worked with their hearts, and they endured lots of hardships, disagreements, fatigue, and uncertainty. In the Dharmapada, which is one of the teachings of the Buddha, it says, the wise are builders of their own refuge. The wise are builders of their own refuge. So I just wanted to remind us all about the importance of this building, that this building exists because of those pioneers, of the people who helped build it and who came all the way from Japan. So we too should think about maintaining this building, not just as a physical structure, but as a place where we can practice patience, mindfulness, loving kindness, compassion, and gratitude. So every time we refrain from anger, we lay a brick. Every time we forgive, we polish a stone. Every time we meditate, we strengthen the foundation. So one of the last things I wanted to do was talk about, so some of those pioneers were really important. Some of the people that I remember actually in this building who made this building happen are people like Tak Okamura. So I remember Uncle Tak. He would be always the last to leave when Chowmen suppers were held. He was mopping the floor. He was cleaning the walks. In fact, him and I would get into a competition to see who could clean the walks better. And there was usually 3 or 4 walks, and I was always struggling to see if I could get 2 of the walks to clean, and he would clean 1. He would usually win, and he would do 2, while I only did 1. People like Akira Ichika. The thing I remember most about Akira was he would come in to temple services on Sunday. He would look at the rows of chairs, and I want you guys to look at the rows of chairs and see, are they straight or are they crooked? Are there any sort of out of place? Is there a slight bend to the rows? He would come in and he would straighten them all out. It was just amazing to me that he would do that every time. I'm sure if he saw the state of the chairs right now, he wouldn't be very happy. He would quietly, after the service is over, go and straighten them out, right? But it also reminds me of people like Mr. Kobayashi. How many people remember Mr. Kobayashi from Raymond? Yeah. So Mr. Kobayashi was the person who looked after the Naijin in the Raymond Temple. And I read somewhere that he did it for over 50 years. In fact, there's a picture of him on the Naijin on his 100th birthday, which is pretty amazing to me. So he would look after the Naijin, set it up, and he would also ring the kansho bell, from what I understand. And from what I remember, he used to ring the kansho bell really, really loud, right? So that everybody in town, not just in the temple, but everybody in town in Raymond could hear it, right? And it's those people that I will remember, and it's those people that we need to carry on the legacy of this temple with. So, just in closing, I wanted to say that, you know, we think of this place as a building, a structure. It's maybe doesn't have as many connections to our ancestors as some of the founding temples did, but it still is the legacy that our founders, our ancestors, our families, our friends left for us. And so I think it is important as a community that we gather in this place and try to maintain the temple as best as we can. So I'm missing the last page, but so I hope that this month, where we get to remember to clean the temple, to maintain it, and also the fact that we're starting on this legacy fund, the fund to help maintain the temple, is something that we can remember and continue to support. So I'm going to get people to please join me in Gassho as we recite the Nembutsu. Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu.
Thank you, Sensei. For our final gatha this morning, we'll be singing Ondoksan, or Gratefulness. So I'll ask everyone to please rise, and then after we're done singing, if you'll please put your palms together in gasho. So if you'll please rise. Let us remember that this temple is not ours alone. It belongs to all beings and to the timeless workings of Amita's compassion. May we care for it with our hearts of gratitude and humility, knowing that in doing so, we nurture the Sangha and deepen our connection to the Buddha's vow. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you, everyone. You may be seated. So that concludes today's service. I do have a number of announcements, but I will give anybody else the opportunity if they have any other announcements that they'd like to make first. Nope. Okay, so this is my learnings from reading our Hikari, our newsletter. The temple cleanup is next weekend. It's also our family service. So temple cleanup starts at 8, so if you're able to join us, please join in. Family service starts at 10:30, and there'll still be activities for the kids to join in to help clean temple. And after that, if you're still about, there is a pizza lunch that will be served to us. In 2 weeks, on November 29th, it's our Bodhi Bake Sale and Bazaar. It goes from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and this is the first bake sale that we've held since 2019. So please plan to support us by either attending the sale, donating something, and we're also going to have a little tea coffee bar set up, so please bring along some friends, buy a cup of coffee and some goodies, and just enjoy sitting down, relaxing, and being surrounded by other Sangha members. And if you're dropping off baking, you will have the opportunity to drop off baking on the Friday before. We'll be here in the evening setting up. And if you're dropping off baking on Saturday, of course we will accept it at any time. But for the ease of the members that are setting up for the bake sale, if you could try to have it here before 9:30 in the morning, that would be appreciated. And we will be selling a mixture of both fresh and frozen goods. So just as a heads up for that as well. Another note from our treasurer team, when you are filling out checks to the BTSA, when you're making donations, whether it be for one of the Sandai Hoyo or for a Shotsuki, or you're just donating to the temple, which is awesome. If you will no longer fill it out BTSA, that's something I got into the habit of doing. The banks aren't necessarily happy with that. And also don't put the BTSA, because that's not part of the official temple name, so if you'll please remind that. So if you will just put Buddhist Temple of Southern Alberta, and for the ease, if you are again donating with a check, at the 2 envelope stations out front, there's actually a stamp. So you don't need to, if you're comfortable, you don't need to fill it in with anything, and you can just stamp it when you get to temple. So I think those are all my notices, yes? Okay. So Sensei, can I ask you to please do, Russ has an announcement.
Yes,
Movie-
thank you.
Yes, movie night for the Ikigomi next weekend on Saturday. Be soup and then bread and then also the Secret Life of Arrietty. It's the Miyazaki version of Thumbelina. And one thing to build on Ikuta Sensei's that keeps coming to mind, I went on a 10-day excursion for a canoe trip in northern BC at 17. It was raining every day, it was cold, we had no choice but to go through it, and I came back and Grandma Tanaka said, "How was your trip?" And I said, "Oh, Grandma, it was so cold, no bathrooms, there was no heat, no nothing." And then I realized I was complaining to the wrong person. There was an hour lecture of what it was like back in those days. Sensei Shokuzen no kotoba o onegaishimasu yo.
Sure, thanks, Kaiden. If I can get people to put their hands together in gasho. We are grateful for this food we are about to partake, for all of the causes and conditions that have brought us together. We're grateful for the opportunity to gather as a Sangha in this beautiful temple we call the Buddhist Temple of Southern Alberta. Nama Amidabutsu. Nama Amidabutsu. Itadakimasu. Thanks, everybody.
So thanks again, everyone. And in my short site, I actually forgot to thank the Toban, who is already busy working in the multi-purpose room setting up for coffee. So thank you to Toban 4. But thanks, everybody. Have a good week.